Hello, everyone. Thanks for that introduction, Nola, and thanks for everybody taking the time to attend. I'm not going to introduce myself at the start of the talk. I will do it at the end, and if I forget, please just remind me. But I want you to consider something, and that is that it's a miracle that we are actually here. And I don't mean on this talk, I mean that we exist on the planet. And I'm not talking about spiritual things today. I'm talking purely physically. When you come to think about it, the environment in which we live is really quite hostile to creatures such as we are. We've got soft, fragile skins. We don't have scales. We don't have thick hides. We don't have horns. We don't have claws. We're not very fast. We don't have teeth of any substance. And so how is it that we survive when we are surrounded by not only wild animals that could eat us up in a blink of an eye, but also absolutely gazillions of microbes that could possibly infect us, viruses all over the show, and so on. And yet here we are. So we largely have to live by our wits. We largely have to know how to build homes for ourselves, build shelters, create environments, artificially, if you like, that are safe for us. And the other thing is that we can rely on certain defense systems that are built into our bodies. And the biggest one, and the one I'm going to focus on today, is in fact the immune system. So before I talk about how we can support our immune system, I want to do a whistle-stop tour around what the immune system encompasses, because it's huge. It's way bigger than I think any of you have imagined. So there are two groups well, there are two categories, shall we say, of the immune system. One is called innate immunity. Innate immunity means that you are born with it. And so what would that look like? Well, the first thing is that we have physical barriers. We all have a skin, and the skin is our biggest organ, and it is meant to be there to protect us from the outside environment. We need our skin to be supple. We need it to be strong. We need it to be able not to be injured very readily. And we know what happens when we injure ourselves. If we get a cut, our body has to come rally around and deal with whatever infection might be trying to get in and cause the body to heal. We need the skin to be whole. And people who suffer from skin ailments like eczema and so on battle with infections. They are not secure from the environment that is trying to assault them from the outside. The second thing is that we've got mucous membranes. Now, mucous membranes are like skin, if you like, in that they are protecting us from the outside world, but they are inside our body. So it's in our nose, in our throat, in our lungs, in our digestive tract. And when you just think about our digestive tract, for example, the thickness of the digestive tract wall is only one single cell thick. And we are eating stuff full of roughage, which is important. Imagine how that single cell wall is being scoured by the food that we've put into our bodies. And so it gets damaged all the time. And those cells are having to renew all the time. And when you have cancer treatment, for example, one of the side effects is that you get sores in your mouth, and you get sores in your, and you suffer in your gut. And it's because the damage that the chemotherapy is causing to those mucous membranes causes those sores. So it's a very important protective part of your body. Then there are also cellular components, which are cells that are involved in this innate immunity. There's a big group called phagocytes. Phagocytes are cells that eat up other things. So one of their jobs is to go around eating up the debris that comes from dying cells and so on. So they are vacuum cleaners, if you like. And they also do other jobs where they actually are shown which cells are invading cells, like microbes, and they can go and chew those up and get rid of them in that way. But it's very non-specific, really. And then there is another group of cells which are called natural killer cells, or NK cells. And I just want you to bear that in mind, because I will draw your attention to that a bit later when we talk about products. Then there are chemical defenses. So there are two major systems. One is called the complement system, and it is a series of chemicals which help to target, label, and get rid of invading cells and bacteria and so on. And the other is a group of compounds called cytokines, which promote inflammation, and inflammation is a very important part of our immune system. Now, I just want to flag cytokines as well, because you might have read during the COVID episode that people suffered from a cytokine storm. And many of the people who died had the cytokine storm going on inside them, which meant that this part of the immune system was totally overwhelmed, and it was just pumping out these chemicals which were flooding the body and eventually overwhelmed the body. So we use those all the time, but in a controlled way. And then I've already mentioned inflammation. Inflammation produces fever. It produces heat at a point of invasion, like when you've got a thorn in your flesh, or a cut, or a graze. And it causes vasodilation, which means that it opens up the blood vessels, so more blood and all the important immune cells can be brought to the site of the assault very efficiently, and can deal with the problem and get rid of the enemy, so to speak, and allow the body to heal. So that's the innate immunity, and that's present really from birth. And then there's a whole nother part of the immune system, which is called adaptive immunity. And this is not, it's available in mammals and so on, but it's a fairly advanced part of the immune system. And adaptive means that it changes over time. And that is the part of the immune system which produces antibodies. And it is also the part of the immune system which we can manipulate with things like vaccines. Because what happens is that when your body sees an infectious agent for the first time, it's brand new. So it's like reading a brand new message. And it takes a little while for your body to read that and kick into action as far as the adaptive immune system is concerned. But once you have had the infection, you get what are called memory cells, which remember that particular infection. And so if that virus or bug comes around a second time, your immune system can kick into action almost immediately and get rid of the infection very quickly. And so the way immunization works is that you try and teach the body to recognize a potential infection ahead of time. And so it's ready and waiting to take charge of the new infection that it hasn't really seen in the natural way, but it has been taught through the vaccine to recognize those particular bugs. And in the adaptive immunity, you've got antibodies, and you've also got cells. Those are mostly T cells, which play a whole host of roles in making the adaptive immunity work. And then on top of that, you've got the lymphatic system. You've got organs, you've got the spleen, you've got lymph nodes, you've got the thymus, you've got and then you've got the bone marrow. And all the cells, from every cell in our body, in fact, originates from stem cells formed in the bone marrow, including all the cells involved in our immune system. And then those stem cells are not yet trained to do the job that they'll eventually do, but when they find their way to the organ in which they're going to spend their days, they get taught what their new role is to be, and they learn the skills, and they become, say, a liver cell or a spleen cell or a T cell or a B cell. So it's incredibly complicated. And that's really the message that I want to leave you with at this point. So, what do we do to facilitate this, to enable our bodies to have the most efficient immune system that it can possibly have? Because let's face it, it is extremely complicated, but if it's not working properly, then we are in peril. Then these gazillions of bacteria that are surrounding us, the viruses that are surrounding us all the time, can have a field day with us, and we will get sick, and we will get every infection that is possible that passes across our paths, and we will be sickly. And similarly, if we start getting the wrong kind of cells, which we are always getting, cells get damaged, and they become tumor cells, they become cancerous. And if our bodies don't have the immune system in place to deal with those, then they will take hold of your body, and the tumor will grow, or the cancerous blood cells will overrun the blood. And so you have to have your immune system ready to do its job at all times, or else you are likely to get sick. Simple as that. And as we've heard over and over again, they now believe that one of the foundational causes of all our chronic disease is actually chronic inflammation. And I said to you earlier that inflammation is one of the innate immune responses of the body to say, all is not well here, we're in battle, we have to do something about it. We are summoning the troops to come and deal with the problem. The problem there is that if we don't get the message to the body that the threat is over and that the troops must go home, we live in chronic inflammation. It's low grade, but it's chronic, and that's the thing that leads eventually to chronic disease. So we've got to do something about this. And we aren't in control of each little part of it. Thank heavens for that. We can't even manage our banking accounts most of the time. So imagine if we were in charge of every single one of these hundreds of thousands of reactions that are going on all the time. It happens on its own. We're designed to operate in that way. But we do have a job to do. And the job that we have to do is to make sure that the body has all the tools on board to do the job that it's designed to do. And that's where our wits fail us. When you stop and think, and I'd like you to do this for yourself, when you think, sit there and think, you say, oh, I eat actually quite a good diet. We all think that. If we didn't think that, we wouldn't do it, presumably. But what I would like you to do is to commit to taking notes for a few days, and you jot down every single thing that crosses your lips for that day, and do it for several. And you will be absolutely astonished at what you do put into your mouth. And you will see that you're not always doing your body a great service. And so you're overfeeding it, but it's undernourished, and then you expect it still to be able to do all these things that are keeping you alive. And this is where we have something to offer the world and to teach the world. And that is our job. So now I will introduce myself because it relates to what I've said. Over 30 years ago, I was faced with a late-stage cancer diagnosis. My kids were young. They were 8 and 5 years old at the time. And so it was extremely important to me that I conquered the disease because I needed to be there to raise my children. And so I went through the whole treatment. I had major surgery. I had chemotherapy for over a year. I had radiation. I had everything that they could throw at me. And I was told that I was being given the strongest chemotherapy available at the time in order to maximize my chance of surviving. Just bear in mind that chemotherapy is very toxic, and it really is a battle or a competition, shall we say, between whether the chemotherapy kills the cancer before it kills you. And so because what chemotherapy deals with is that it kills rapidly dividing cells. So it kills all the cells that are having to multiply all the time, like your gut cells, all your mucous membrane cells, your hair cells, and so on and so forth. The reason all those things get sores and fall out and what have you is that they are no longer able to grow as they normally would. So that is a sign of the competition that is going on. But I had been trained as a biochemist and immunologist, and I knew that a body that was fully equipped with everything it needed was able to fight the battle. Otherwise, we'd all be dead of cancer. I mean, that cancer would overrun us if we didn't have an immune system in place. And the fact that cancer hit me told me very starkly that what I thought I was doing to be enough to look after my body was not. What I thought was a good diet was actually not a bad diet, but it wasn't able to supply me all the nutrients that I needed for the level of stress that I was living under and the size of the attack that I was under, if you like. And so I made a special search of nutritional supplements that would support me through that journey to healing cancer. And I was picky about what I was going to take. There were lots of boxes that needed to be ticked, but there were three in particular that I'll mention now. One was that I was over having chemicals pumped into me. I wanted nothing more that was chemical pumped into me. So the supplements had to be not only all natural, but from our normal human food. There are lots of natural substances which are not good for us. Opium is one of them, for example. Might be fun for some, but it's certainly not good for us. So I needed it to come from our normal human food chain. I also needed it to be well researched, because research is actually one of my passions. And I needed to know that it had been tested for effectiveness. And then the third thing that I'll mention now is that I needed it to have been around and used by a lot of people, so that there were stories, testimonials, if you like, of people who had used it with success. And fortunately for me, someone introduced me to Neolife. And for those people on the call who are distributors, please remember that there is probably someone out there who needs to hear the message you've got to share. If Erica had not spoken to me, maybe I would never have learned about Neolife. And without trying to be melodramatic, I doubt that I'd still be here. It's that important. And for people who are guests on the call, bear in mind that you have been given some information. And even if you don't want to use it for yourself, there might be people that you know who need that information. And we are not being fair to other people if we don't share it, if we keep quiet about it. Big responsibility. But what are the products that we need to take? So let's just think back about the story I told of how our immune system works. And can you imagine, firstly, how much energy is required for all those things to work together in harmony? We are energy tanks. We just use up so much energy on an everyday basis. And when I was teaching at the university, I struggled with getting sort of enthusiastic curiosity going with some of the students. And to me, it was just amazing that we existed at all. And so I would tell them these stories, trying to get them to at least say, wow, that's amazing. And one of them is that we actually are defying the laws of physics in many respects. The third law of Newton's third law is the law of entropy. which says that things go from highest organization to lowest organization. That's the natural order of things. They disperse their energy and disintegrate. Well, we are like little punctuation marks in that process. You know, the biblical expression from dust to dust and ashes to ashes. Well, we kind of start out as dust in a way. We live our lives, and then we return to dust at the end of the day. And so we are actually obeying the laws of physics with this little window in which we're disobeying it. And the only reason we can disobey it is that we are able to access energy. The energy ultimately comes from the sun. The plants take the sun's energy and turn it into carbohydrates. We and animals can then use those carbohydrates to grow and to provide us with the source of the energy that allows us to live our little lives. And eventually we stop, because that's the nature of things, and we then decay, basically, and we return and repay our debt, our energetic debt. I think that's a fascinating thing. But where does this energy come from? It comes from the fact that we have in our bodies a way of converting food, carbohydrates, and fats into energy that we can use to do all these wonderful things that our immune system does. And in order for that process to take place, several things have to be in place for us. One is that our cell membranes have to be intact so that the cells can take what they need into them and get rid of waste material. And the other thing that is needed is that the mitochondria need to be there and able to convert the carbohydrates and fats into ATP, which is like our energy currency. And if we don't have certain fats in place in our bodies, that becomes an inefficient process. And what we know now is that the fats called lipids and sterols, which come from whole grains, are fundamentally important in that process of building the membranes and allowing the mitochondria to do their job. And if we do not eat whole grains in quantity, which we don't, we will not be getting those oils, and we have to make sure that we supply them differently. And there is no other way that I'm aware of where we can get those oils as a supplement than through Neolife, and that supplement is called TreeNN. It is a foundationally important product. And if you only ever get people to use TreeNN on an ongoing basis, you will be doing them a great service, because they will then be able to at least have the energy that their body needs to do all the reactions that the body needs to do. So that's the one thing. The other thing is all these reactions that have to take place are facilitated by proteins called enzymes. Enzymes are amazing. They allow our bodies to do these complicated things all at body temperature. If we try and do those reactions on a lab bench, if it's possible at all, it's usually done under high heat. But we can't do it in our bodies under high heat. It's got to be done at 37 degrees. And so it's, in many respects, not really feasible unless you've got an enzyme that is facilitating that process. So we need those enzymes. They're built out of protein. Where does the protein come from? It comes from the food that you eat. Some of the amino acids in proteins, which are like the building blocks of the proteins, can be made in our bodies by converting one amino acid into another. But some are called essential, and our body to have a protein source where we can be absolutely certain that on a daily basis we're getting the amino acids that we need. And so the Neolife shake is kind of an essential supplement. I take it every day because I have to be certain that I've got the amino acids there that my body needs to do the job that it needs. Also, every single cell is built up of proteins. Your hair and your skin, which we spoke about earlier, needs protein. It's an absolutely essential foodstuff. Now, most of us get protein into our diets, but we tend to eat a very narrow range of proteins, and we tend to not get the full range of all the amino acids that we need. And so we're kind of running on empty much of the time as far as protein goes. The enzymes also use vitamins and minerals to enable them to work. So where do the vitamins and minerals come from? They come from fruits and vegetables mostly. Some of the minerals come from meat and animal products. And we have to trust that the fruits and vegetables that are supposedly supplying us with those minerals and vitamins actually have them on board. And the research is showing that that is less and less likely to be true. Lots of reasons, I won't go into many of them, but one of them is big agriculture, where the same crop is grown on the same land, season in, season out, sometimes many crops within one season. And the way in which those crops are sustained is by feeding the soil with artificial fertilizers. And the fertilizers don't necessarily contain all the minerals that we are expecting to get from those fruits and vegetables when we eat them. Two just to mention are zinc and selenium, because the plants don't seem to need them particularly to grow. So from the point of view of fertilizer makers, there's no point of putting ingredients into the fertilizer that doesn't have an obvious effect on the growth of the crop. They fail to understand that it does affect the quality of the crop and whether it's supplying us with what we need. So we can't actually trust our fruit and vegetables very much, even if we eat them. And when you do that exercise that I've already suggested you do, you'll probably realize that you eat very few fruits and vegetables on a daily basis, and certainly very little variety. And so we have this product called Formula 4 Plus, and this was a product that I started my journey with. It's got the treonine oils that I've already mentioned, and it's got all the vitamins and minerals that we need. So I was using Shake and I was using Formula 4 Plus. My journey with the product started in about 1990. And I then added to those, I added CalMag. I mentioned the bones. The bones have to be strong because they hold us upright and keep us mobile. But they also have to be strong because that's where the bone marrow is. And that's where all our cells are born. And if our bones aren't working properly, then we've got a problem. And so I added CalMag to what I was taking. And then there was one other thing I added, and that was omega-3. And the omega-3 are also essential oils, and they are very, very, very important because they are the anti-inflammatory compounds. I mentioned that inflammation is one of the keystones of the immune response, and that it is a way of rallying the troops to the point of attack. But once the enemy has been beaten, those troops have to be sent back to barracks. And if you don't have omega-3 on board, the troops wander around, they trigger happy, they're ready to fight, but there's no enemy. And so they start fighting themselves and they fight you and so on. So the omega-3 is super important to dampen down the inflammation. It's got a lot of other roles to play as well, but that's one of the reasons I started taking it. Then in about 1995, and then I was taking Beta-Guard at the time, just to try and detox from the chemo after I'd had each treatment. Then in about 1995, a new product came onto the market. It had taken 10 years in the research, and it is one of our other flagship products. It's called carotenoid complex, And this product has been shown to boost immunity, and it is an antioxidant, and it has anti-inflammatory properties. But do you remember early on I mentioned natural killer cells, and I said, remember those? Well, what this product has been shown to do in real human test people is to increase the activity of natural killer cells by 37% within a short space of time, 21 days. So you are boosting one of the most important innate immune systems in your body. What do the natural killer cells do? They recognize and get rid of cells that have been attacked by viruses, and they recognize and get rid of cancerous cells. If that's not a valuable thing to have going for you, then I don't know what is. And so this became an essential product in my journey to health. Then as time moved on, I added a lot of things. I just want to mention a couple more because I'm sure your brains are fried by now. But I added flavonoid complex. Flavonoid complex is a cousin of the carotenoid complex. Carotenoid complex is a concentrate of phytonutrients which come from the bright red and orange and yellow fruits and vegetables. And then the flavonoids come from the purples and the reds and the berries and the beets and those sorts of things. And the carotenoid complex deals with the fatty parts of the cells, which is the membranes. That's what it protects, whereas this protects the watery parts of the cell or the aqueous parts of the cell. So they work hand in hand. They are closely related, but have different jobs to do. And I have someone in my team, she's actually in Monica's team, who is I don't know, homeopath, I'll call her. And this is the product that she sells to people. She buys 3 or 4 cases every month because she said it is the most effective antiviral compound that she has ever come across. We know all about viruses. No, we know very little about viruses, but we have been scared to death by viruses recently. And this is a product that is very important to keep one able to tackle viral infections. Vitamin C is as well, and this is a cousin of vitamin C. And then the third one I added is called cruciferous. These are compounds that come from the cruciferous vegetables, the broccolis and cabbages and kales and all those sorts of things, plus a whole lot of other compounds. And they form like a police patrol. And they go through your body and they get rid of compounds that are likely to cause cancers, particularly the cancers that are hormone mediated. Then I just want to briefly say, we don't forget about the kids. Kids are growing all the time. Their cells are multiplying all the time. And they too need all the nutrients on board. They too need the protein. They too need the vitamins and minerals and the antioxidants and the flavonoids and all those things that I've mentioned. And so there are these 2 products called VitaSquares and VitaGuard, which are the kids' equivalent that supply most of those things, plus the protein shake. And then one would add omega-3 to the kids as well. And then one final thing, and it's not part of the topic, but just bear in mind that if you're going to keep your skin healthy, you've got to be careful about what you put onto your skin on the outside. So make sure that you are using skincare products that are safe. We've got a range there. You can go and look at it in the manual. If you haven't tried them yet, please do. And if you are new, ask the person who invited you to tell you more about the skincare products and the cleaning products, because if we can keep the outside as toxin-free as possible, we are keeping our barriers to infection intact and healthy. And so I think I've said enough. I hope that you've learned something. I certainly couldn't recommend strongly enough that you consider taking at least some of these products, because they could prevent you from getting sick. If you are sick, they could help you heal again. And it is our responsibility to enable the gift that we've been given in an amazing immune system, to give it the tools it needs to do the job that it needs to do. Otherwise, it will cease to be a miracle that you're here, because you will not be here anymore, maybe. Okay, so that's cheeky. Sorry about that. But anyway, have a good evening, and I'll see you another time.